This is a Woodstock Soapstone Fireview wood burning stove. And I'm going to replace the catalytic converter in it. So first thing we need to do is take everything off the top. You need to make sure the stove is cold. There's no fire going. That's kind of obvious. Lift up the top, and right here is the catalytic converter. Now, these are shipping bolts, so when they ship the stove to you, the catalytic converter doesn't fall out. You don't necessarily have to reinstall those once you receive it or changing it. So it just lifts out, and you can see this one here has started to fall apart. Normally, if you're going to just clean it, you pull it out, get a vacuum, and vacuum it out, or take it outside and blow it out. Do both sides. See how clogged up this one is around there. So you can also use a pipe cleaner to clean that out. So I have a HEPA vac, and I'm going to go ahead and clean up in here at the same time. Now, the newest style catalytic converter does not have a cast iron frame anymore. It's just a stainless steel frame. So it drops back in. There's a gasket around it where it was, so you want to make sure that it's centered in there. And then the factory says to use the bolts to make sure that the catalytic converter is centered properly. If you can't get the bolts in, then it's not centered. So these bolts fit fine, so that means it's in place. I don't need those necessarily anymore. I'll leave them there. So that's it. Now you could torque these down if you wanted. These tabs are very flimsy, so the bolts don't tighten up very much, or you'll just bend the tabs. Basically, that's all there is to it. New catalytic converter. Make sure that the top closes all the way, or you get a leak, and you're all done. Okay, this is how I operate my Fireview stove from Woodstock. I have this screen around it. That's because I've had the dogs get too close to the glass and start burning their fur on the glass before they realize how hot it is. Anyway, so you start with both of these levers down, and then load your wood, build your fire. I usually leave the side open until the fire gets going. I put a temperature gauge on the exhaust here. So what I do is I wait until the exhaust is past 300 degrees. Once it passes 300 degrees, you have two levers. The first lever, this lever, This is the lever for the catalytic converter. You cannot lift this lever up and engage the catalytic converter until the exhaust temperature is past 300 degrees. So once I get past 300, I go ahead and flip the lever up. Now the exhaust gases are going through the catalytic converter. And then secondly, I have a temperature gauge on the top, and when the temperature passes 300 here, maybe 350, then I can go back and throttle down the fire depending on how much heat I want. And that's what this second lever is. This controls the amount of air getting into the firebox. So I typically bring it up till it's about on here somewhere between 2 and 1, usually in there. Unless I really want it to throttle down, then I'll go that way. But if you want it full hot, just leave it open. But I usually bring it up close to 2 when I'm normally running it. And that's it. And then if it gets too cold, then I have to add more wood. And I've waited too long. You gotta go back to both levers down and re-get the fire going until you see the exhaust pass 300 and start the whole procedure over again. One way to tell if your catalytic converter is working well is look at the temperature on your stove, and right now you can see it's about 500, and compare it to the temperature coming out the stovepipe, which is 300. So that shows you that that catalytic converter is giving you a 200 degree difference there, which is really good. Prior to changing this, I was only getting about 100, maybe 150 degree difference between the two. Now, once all the volatile gases and stuff burn out of the wood, the catalytic converter doesn't have that great of effect. So as it burns down and you're left with more charcoal type stuff, you'll see less of a difference.